Okay, so today I wanted to log in. First off, when I log in, it cannot be about racism, discrimination, or sexism. So it cannot be the color of my skin. It cannot be because I'm a guy and have a different tone of voice. And it cannot be because of my hair or the clothes I wear. Okay, so when you make a lot of money and you do the work, especially on the assets or the businesses, you're able to go to the bank and do business. If you do business with the bank and they seize all your assets, right? Even your net worth, you might be the owner of World Music Innovations, Coconut Kingdom, the Winners Club, Constant Cash, Plant Powered, and so on, which are connected to the United States government and the Hawaii government. When you manage a business, then your net worth increases. The bank is not allowed to stop your assets and then put you on zero. Then you would need to sue the bank, right? That's suing First Hawaiian Bank. Once I send in all the legal documents to different cities, different Congress people, especially Maui County and the state of Hawaii, then the bank automatically needs to open my bank account. Because if I did business for 20 years and also show my credit report, I wouldn't have my bank locked on me. So forcing somebody to open another bank account when they already have one and then stealing their money, that's illegal. Okay, so now if you do that to somebody for 100 days, that's very, very illegal because that's life threatening to somebody who's a soul survivor already. If you went through certain things that made you a soul survivor, you might have been in a life or death situation, you might have made so much money in business, and then you had to stop doing business. But that doesn't mean that you stop doing business. You might have had to pivot the type of business you do. If you're used to doing business, you could go to my LinkedIn resume. When you go to my LinkedIn resume, you can see all of the different work and the professions I've done over the years. Even photography, social media, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok. These are all different forms of work. YouTube. These are monetizable forms of work. In the state of Hawaii, if they're not paying you for that work, then that would be illegal. Especially on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. So if you are used to only working physically in the community, if you only do physical labor, you might have to pivot. So you might have been doing physical labor as well as online work. So here's the thing, just because the videos are longer doesn't mean that people can lose comprehension of the work. So if the bank puts you on zero, they automatically owe you more money, especially for 100 days, especially if they made you lose 3 months of rent, 3 months of your credit cards, 3 months of your business. Once they start shutting down Apple Care and they start disconnecting all of your electronics, this is illegal because people who do the work walk into the bank. You cannot then put somebody into a chokehold and practice police brutality. Whether I'm a guy, whether I'm a girl, whether I have hair like this. So once they put you on zero, then they cannot put the state on you and say, let's track all your resources. Okay, so the bank sees all my assets and then the state wants to then act like they have a case number and a case ID that I have to go speak with somebody. If I was used to doing physical work and now I only do online work, sometimes online work, you can make a lot more money online. Okay, so if the bank takes your money and threatens the person who is the customer at the bank, this is illegal. Then I have State of Hawaii Department of Human Services asking me to call them over and over in different mails and letters. If I use the internet and I tell them this is the amount of resources I need, because that's up to the person, especially if the bank seizes their assets. I wouldn't have, so that's also a manager with the United States managing businesses. But if you also then left your physical form of work, maybe all you did was sales transactions over and over, then you wanted to do it online. Here's the problem. If the bank freezes your online account, then the state is asking for your resources. This is illegal because the state knows your social security number, they know your phone number, they know your TransUnion credit score, they know how much credit cards you have, especially then when you go online and you show all the documents. If then there's a caseworker that wants to speak about how you're on zero and keep sending you letters instead of look at the online documentation through the portal where you can then enter it. This is also illegal because through the portal, after you enter it, you wouldn't need to talk. If I had hearing issues, if I had certain disability, if I didn't have my vehicles and all my assets were seized, then that's illegal because they would already know that he needs help. He needs utility help, he needs housing help, he needs food supplement help, he already has his social security under wage because the amount of physical work he did would be not equatable if you paid anybody $1,000 in social security. So then if the bank does an illegal activity and seizes all your assets, even your social security, and then has the state act like you have to go speak about how you have zero, even though you entered it in the online portal. You said, I have this much family I need to take care of. I have these people. They might not know that the one person is paying for everything. They might be paying for everything with one bank account, so it's easy for somebody who might have, what if the person that just got injured again after already having injuries, not getting unemployment, and then getting under even minimum wage, not even looked at their references. So then every time I go to Social Security, they would have to look at my references, and the state of Hawaii would have to look at my references. They would have to look at, okay, so rent normally, cost of living, the COLA, is like $4,000 or $5,000, even if then you go homeless and then you try to figure it out again. If you go homeless, the cost of living still exists. It's still $4,000, $5,000. That means the state wouldn't have to keep talking to the person. If it's somebody like Drake, I don't want to say the names, if it's the Donald Trump, the president, they don't have to keep talking to different people about how they're not getting paid. That's the state doing illegal activity in the state of Hawaii, especially First Hawaiian Bank. So if I have a resume, if I have a social security that's not if it's inside of your bank, that's illegal to ever touch somebody's bank that already has social security, because the work that they did should have also been referenced for the later work, and then it should be transparent that nobody in the bank, nobody in the state of Hawaii can live on $1,000 because of what? The cost of living is more than $1,000. That's how you then make somebody go homeless, and then you send them paperwork after they already submitted online. And then if they were transparent saying that, okay, I need actually this much, I have this much family members, I'm the one who's the sole provider or the sole business owner or the sole survivor, right? Or the sole proprietor or the owner or the manager. Even if you give it to the community manager, they wouldn't know how to live on that amount. So then this is when you would not keep what? either calling them, leaving voicemails, because you would have to do the work. You would approve it. The checks would be in the mail. You wouldn't keep saying that, okay, here's a case number and case ID, and please call us on the 1st of the month, call us on the 5th of the month, call us over here. If your authorized representatives are unable to call at a scheduled time, you may reschedule it. What about actually the cost of living? Because the person needs to survive. That's why they also have Social Security as a sole survivor, especially if they have their lawyer or their legal team. That means First Hawaiian Bank, the state of Hawaii, finance and budgeting, the judicial system, and the comptroller would all look at the proof of evidence, even your credit score, even the longest credit cards you have. If you had a credit card for 19, 20 years and you did 100% payments on it, the minute they don't see the payments, they would have to say, okay, something's wrong. Maybe he doesn't have his millions of dollars. Maybe his assets were seized. Maybe he doesn't have a car right now. Maybe he's losing his voice because he has to speak online and do the work online, because it then reaches more people. It can then reach not only the state of Hawaii, it can also reach different states much faster. So then, once I gotta post the videos, somebody else cannot act like authority to the videos that I have to speak about transparently, especially if the bank illegally seizes your assets. If you want to go get evaluated, or even then have your net worth increased because you have the documentation and the paperwork, they're supposed to automatically approve this money into your bank account, especially if it was illegally closed. Then they will do an auto clearance, reopen it, because if you have Social Security in there, that's illegal to then try to re-injure somebody who was already a sole survivor, who worked in public and has a resume for like the last 20 years, and then who's also online. If that person worked in the community with physical labor, they could take the work online. But if you seize all of their assets, then they won't have internet, they won't have housing, they won't have utilities. Then they would go to the state of Hawaii and say, okay, I need this much. I would type it in online. Because if the bank is trying to seize everything, the minute you have an opportunity, you might lose your phone, you might lose your clothes, you might lose all of that. That's why there's a lot of inconvenience and misunderstanding on how it actually works. If the state of Hawaii and the United States government already make him part of it, so he has lawyers already, but they also make him his own attorney general and lawyer, because he's able to approve the work faster to save his life, because he's a sole survivor, sole proprietor in many businesses. If you do that much work for that many years, by default, you can approve your own work, and you don't have to listen to caseworkers. You don't have to listen to the police if they try to injure you and cause police brutality. If the management already owe me free rent, free utilities, and free cost of living, because the state police, even police that then traffic and cross borders, that means what? If you give them less than they can even survive on after they're a sole survivor, you could give any real estate agent the same amount and then they wouldn't have anything. They would lose their real estate license, they would lose their housing management, they would lose their food, they would lose their entire family. So if I gotta then get what? $200 in EBT after the bank seizes all my assets, give $200 to the caseworker or the president of the United States or anybody that has to meet the cost of living, then they lose everything. This is then when the state is practicing illegal activities, illegal policing, and illegal banking. This is why Joshua Elijah Ford versus the state of Hawaii automatically is supposed to get a restitution check and a settlement check and have automatic clearance back into the same bank account. Because if you do a lot of business, right, you're not supposed to open 50 different bank accounts. You're not supposed to then try to go walk to the next bank. You would have all your accounting, even for 20 years, already with your debit cards at the First Hawaiian Bank. And then if they seize your assets, then for 100-day period, then they owe me $100 trillion to $10.8 billion. And the comptroller in Houston, in Texas, and in the state of Hawaii would have to be like, okay, that's the state of Hawaii that did that, but we understand now over here. We understand that in California, we understand that in Arizona, we understand that in New York, and across the globe, there's a cost of living. If the state is not meeting the cost of living, while the bank then seizes your Social Security, which then helps pay your rent, even if then the lawyer steals your Social Security amount, this is all illegal activities on Joshua Elijah Ford's name. Then you would have to if the police injure me, I wouldn't be able to report it or talk to the police that injure me. If the bank sees my assets, that's then putting a threshold that's illegal onto somebody who already gets free housing. Because if I worked in the community for 20 years as a commission salesperson, making thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands, even millions, and then I build a record label and go #1, Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, all distribution companies, this is easy to automatically see that that's a remittance check, settlement check, restitution check. What kind of check do you want to call it? There's many different types of names and forms. But once you go against somebody's TransUnion credit report that shows, okay, this one was for 19 years, this one was for 18 years, all 100%. Once then they say you start missing your payments, and then they add interest onto the payments, especially if they let it affect your credit line. You already sue the government of Hawaii, and I don't have to talk about it continuously, especially if I was injured as a soul survivor. If I lost my hearing and my voice and my abilities, even though I have beyond amazing abilities because I could then do it myself, like an attorney general, I wouldn't need to continue to talk to people more undereducated than I am that then continues to give me less than what they have. This is satin that I'm wearing. I walked into the bank with gold on, which is the gold standard, right? If you had money before, you could then also show gold to represent the amount of money you have. If you're one of the hardest workers and you walk into the bank to either deposit or withdraw, they cannot put you in a physical chokehold. That's illegal to the business person, the person who owns all of these business entities, or also then worked with all of these business corporations, even the person who also worked in the state of Hawaii. If I already worked with the state of Hawaii and then they give me something below cost of living, that means this case number or the caseworker that doesn't approve it if I'm in a different state, if I'm on the road and I gotta do it online. If the caseworker keeps telling me different dates, call on the 1st of the month, call on the 5th of the month, this and that, and I already uploaded the amount I need in the portal, and they're not giving me that amount, this is then when it's illegal in the state. That's when Joshua Elijah Ford is versus the state. But here's the only thing. Anytime you sue somebody, you're not actually against the person. This is when maturity comes into play. is only versus the actions that would make it unlivable. Because somebody who has a resume this long and uses technology cannot then have the bank seize their phones, seize their computers, seize their house and make them go homeless. They cannot seize their clothes, and now I cannot wear clothes. Then I gotta take off my clothes and show that, okay, I literally don't have anything. Then you cannot be sexist that I'm a guy. Then you cannot be racist that I have a different color skin tone or different hair. Then you cannot discriminate against my bank account after my assets were seized, and I wouldn't have to actually speak, especially if I went through neck injuries, throat injuries, or if I even have to whisper like Michael Jackson, because the way I made a lot of my money was through music recording. If they seize all your assets, your royalties, your monetization, and you cannot even go into your Facebook account, this is a threat in Hawaii, and you would automatically give them the money so they could be what? Working as an attorney general to fix this, instead of talking to somebody who didn't go to high school or college but now works at the state, luckily. That's why even in the video when I walked into the bank, I had to put the camera on me for consumer protection. Because if you wait in line and you're denied service, this is a form of discrimination. It's illegal activity. It doesn't matter if it's a white person then talking to me. It doesn't matter if it's an older person talking to me. By default, the work that I did already would have it approved. That's why even the lawyers with the United States, they're like, yeah, he owned his own trademark patent already because he showed proof of documentation of the sales history. Then when the bank messes up your accounting, that's when they gotta give you settlement checks and restitution checks by default. Because if you then do this in philosophy and times it by 1 million people, then the entire Hawaiian island of Maui is homeless. If you can then replicate what you did to Josh Ford to anybody else, that means your grandma and grandpa is homeless, your mom and dad is homeless, even the housing manager or real estate agent then goes homeless in philosophical viewpoints by replicating giving somebody under the cost of living and then seizing their banking assets. That means everybody that I was already doing a peaceful protest on the streets, this is why they were doing the protest, and I just jumped out and I recorded it. Because once you keep doing this to many people, now Hawaii looks like Skid Row. There's only tents, there's only people that's homeless, and these are some of the smartest people, smarter than the state of Hawaii. Especially if that right there behind that is Coconut Kingdom, registered with the United States government as well as the Hawaii government. With my legal team, especially if then my social security lawyer isn't then moving faster than an attorney general, because somebody who then does their own business, especially with the sales history, they get to supersede everybody who talks back, everybody who's undereducated. Then this video has to get somewhere, but then the right people have to watch it, and then the algorithm doesn't get it to the right people. So a lot of illegal activity, when somebody even in my own house would then start acting differently, because sometimes the man of the house gotta take care of everything for the youngest kids, the oldest kids, sometimes even their mom or grandma with dementia, or their grandpa that having illusions from Vietnam. Somebody still got to take care of the household, pay everything, especially if that's already a business owner who did it in public with corporations, and then also did it online with corporations, as well as their own businesses connected to the state. I cannot keep repeating myself, because if I gotta keep talking on the phone, then I lose my voice. especially if I'm like Michael Jackson and I gained all my money from voice recording. This is then illegal if I already submit it all in the online portal, so we can then have the people without internet, then they can go in public. But the ones with internet, that's automatic approval, especially when the police practice police brutality and the banking practices illegal banking and seizes all assets. This is superseded to all 50 states, and then each state, which I got to 300 Congress members, all get to see this activity, including my housing management and also real estate managers. Because if you give somebody $200 to eat, they're probably going to pass away and not pay their rent, especially if the bank takes your money illegally. And that's a what? Coconut Kingdom, World Music Innovations record label, Constant Cash Records record label, or even the Winners Club Health and Wellness, due to me actually having to switch my domain of work. This is why Joshua Elijah Ford would have U.S. Postal Service, FedEx, and UPS all delivering his restitutions, his remittance, and his settlements every single day. And then if they interfere, then guess what it is? It's like Nipsey Hussle that gets to then own the Brinks truck. Because then when the state interferes and the banking interferes, the Brinks truck is independent to deliver the money, or the state gets to write the checks every day directly to your mailbox if you didn't go homeless and you can even get your mail. All illegal activity. Then when the police act like people cannot be outside, give them the same amount of money too. $200 to eat, and then go tell them afford the cost of living while the bank does illegal foreclosures or illegal bank freezes with Social Security already protecting that. Joshua Elijah Ford versus the state of Hawaii, even versus Wisconsin state, automatically supersedes by being attorney general, especially in different states, especially if I already had to represent myself. Send the money in immediately in cashier's check, even if you have to put cash into an envelope.